All right, parents, here we go again. It's the Ask Dr. Tony episode. This is the Experience Miracles podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, an expert in pediatrics, neurodevelopmental disorders, and drug-free, nervous system-focused healthcare. On this weekly episode, I'll be addressing the top questions on every parent's mind. If there's one thing we love and welcome, it's parents who never stop learning, asking the hard questions, and advocating for your kiddos like none other. So get ready for some real talk, real-life clinical and parenting experience, and real easy to understand answers that will help your family take action and get to that next level of health and healing. You ask, I answer. Let's dive into today's episode. Unfortunately, right now today, as parents, and really anyone, providers, school officials, teachers, administrators, social workers, anybody who truly cares about our kids and our youth and this next generation, what we know we're facing is truly an epidemic of anxiety. There's an incredible book by, Dr. Jonathan Haidt that talks about the anxiety epidemic and the anxious generation. And I unfortunately couldn't agree more, both with the statistics, which, stats don't lie, math doesn't lie, that anxiety is exploding every single year, especially in our teenagers and especially in our young adults, but it's even a much bigger problem in our grade schoolers. I've been in practice almost 20 years and I never, ever, ever saw anxiety really show up in my practice until high school, college, and so forth. Now we've taken in kids who really in kindergarten, grade school would, by the letter of the diagnostic law, fit that criteria of anxiety. And so what we're going to teach you with this one is the truth that we know what's fueling it. And it's its own perfect storm. There's nervous system dysregulation and the perfect storm that's underneath all of this. But then there's also just the medicalization of our society where we say, hey, you want to know the worst kind of anxiety? The anxiety over having anxiety and having this victim identity that says, this is now how I identify that everything in my life is going to be so much more difficult because I have anxiety. I'll talk about that in this one where we really get into what might be an uncomfortable conversation, but we got to have the neurophysiological conversation that is true, scientifically proven, and says, no, we're not genetically programmed for anxiety, any different than we know it's not genetic to say, oh, autism, purely genetic, allergies, purely genetic, autoimmune disorders, purely genetic. We know the neurophysiology. We know what happens within the brain and the body that causes it to go haywire in such a way that will trigger this absolute clinical challenge called anxiety. So it's as real as can be. But have we really made it worse by putting so many labels and so many diagnoses on these kiddos? If you're listening in with this one, I wish you could truly go through every episode of our podcast, every video I've ever made, and really understand the entire context. I'll do my best right within this single one here, but I wish you could understand the entire context that we teach from and understand from and provide care for our patients from, which says, hey, we know that each of these challenges, whether it be anxiety or ADHD or depression or whatever it may be, they're real. We need to take care of these patients and these kiddos at the root cause. We need to help them navigate through the storm to the other side. But we can also, right in the midst of that conversation, say, why do we have so much of it? And the last thing that answers that question is, oh, it's just genetic and we're diagnosing it better. I know a lot of people really in this really positive movement on the surface, but sometimes really ugly movement underneath the surface towards mental health awareness. In fact, right now in the state that I live and practice in, they want to screen third graders for anxiety and depression. And we really look under the hood with that. What they're really getting at is faster access to a label, a diagnosis that limits that child, because the most powerful thing we have in our human body is the brain. And yes, it can go haywire, take us down the road of anxiety. We're going to talk about that and how to get back off that road. But one of the fastest ways there is to be told that you have it, to be told that it's genetic, to be told that there's nothing you can do about it. And the earlier they can get into our kids and get them to buy in to this idea, not neuroscientific fact, idea that they are broken and that they have this condition, well, then the earlier that the pharmaceutical system can continue to back its delivery trucks up to our schools and deliver medication for a lifetime through anxiety, depression diagnoses, either through insurance that your family pays for or state aid or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter who pays the tab. It just matters that the pharmaceutical industry wins. The more kids are diagnosed with this, the more better for them. I know that's not great English, but I'm not trying to really have this perfect conversation with you as parents here today. I'm trying to have an impactful conversation with you where you can really see the truth, not just behind the neuroscience of anxiety and help your kiddos navigate natural drug-free healing. I promise I'll get there. But I'm a dad of 3 teens right now and a 4th kiddo, my 4th child, my 3rd daughter, who's coming right into that world. And so this is one that very much hits home for me, not just as a provider who's a neurologically focused pediatric chiropractor who has helped thousands of kiddos with anxiety, ADHD, depression, be able to navigate it and get to the other side in a drug-free root cause way. But I also know in order to really tap into the fullest healing potential of our patients and even ourselves as parents is to say, we got to look at it differently. We can't just accept it as a label that our neurochemistry is genetically dysfunctional and there's nothing we can do but rely on Prozac and Zoloft and Seroquel for the rest of our days. That science is just not secure. It's just not fully true. Neurotransmitters are involved. There's genetic predisposition, but nothing is more powerful or influential in a negative direction, causing us to maybe struggle with these things or our kids to struggle with these things as our lifestyle, as whether or not we went through the perfect storm and had all these stressors and triggers come from the outside and change the function of our inside neurophysiology and lead to things called sympathetic dominance, nervous system dysregulation, vagus nerve dysfunction, parasympathetic rest, recovery, emotional regulation side of the nervous system suppression. These are real neurophysiological facts that are the underpinnings of anxiety. But I would not be doing our community a service if I didn't get into the slightly more controversial side of this conversation, which is to look at the label and the diagnosis as its own part of the conversation. And if you want to learn more about that and you're listening in here on the Experience Miracles podcast, as we go through, as we navigate our way through this Navigating Anxiety episode, I'm going to have the team put in the show notes an entire episode I did about how dangerous and so often detrimental that diagnosis and that label is. And again, it's a real kind of sweet spot I'm trying to find here with my words to say, it is important that if you or your child are very much clinically struggling with anxiety and depression, that you get the help you need. And I'll even say it forthright right here in this one. The medical world is amazing at saving lives in a crisis intervention sort of situation, including using psychoactive medications when someone is literally just buried by it. I believe in healing in whatever combination, in whatever prioritization and sequencing it takes. But what we really stand for and what we really teach the neurophysiology behind on all of our content like this is to say, hey, let's do exactly that. Let's go for full, complete neurophysiological, drug-free healing, at least in the long-term, long game plan, because we know the root cause. And again, I just have to say it one more time before I open up the hood and get into the scientific sandwich of this one. We know the root cause is not just your mom had it, your aunt had it, your grandpa had it, so you have it. That's not been proven. We know the root cause is not just an imbalance of neurotransmitters, too little serotonin and those sort of things. We know that there's a reason that serotonins, dopamines, cortisols, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and so forth are off kilter. They transmit messages for the neuro system. So when the nervous system is dysregulated, which is a fancier term for out of balance, well, then the neurotransmitters are going to be out of balance because they're just doing what the nervous system tells them to do. So this one is for parents who are just exhausted, really seeing their kiddo melt down and go into an anxiety or panic attack over the smallest things. You're tired of seeing your child not be able to sleep. refuse to go to school, withdraw socially, struggle to make friends, keep friends, have an emotional outburst with you that on a Tuesday you never saw coming and it's over the smallest thing, but then Wednesday maybe is all good and you can't figure out the difference between Tuesday and Wednesday. But we will here with this one, really figuring out what's going on with their nervous system. And maybe you've tried everything in your natural parent toolkit to support them emotionally with their incredibly important mental health. Maybe you've even tried counseling, psychology, and maybe you've even ratcheted that up from the pediatrician to a psychiatrist or a neurologist and tried medication. But no matter what you try, you're still stuck in this storm of anxiety and aggression. You're not alone. You're not failing your child. Literally, it's been exploding since anxiety over the course of the last generation or two, where things we're about to discuss with high stress pregnancies, birth trauma, being chronically sick as kiddos, overuse of antibiotics and toxins, and this sympathetic fight or flight storm that shows up actually for most of our anxiety cases that I take in, even young adults and teenagers. I can go all the way back to their pregnancy, their labor delivery, and their early childhood case history, and we can really pin the tail on the donkey and say that's where the nervous system first started to go into this dysregulated state and later on surface and show up as anxiety. But now our kids are really up against not only those early childhood, the medicalization of pregnancy and labor and delivery and early childhood, but now smartphones, technology, social media. And then they were already millions more going into anxiety and depression. The rates were going through the roof all the way back to 2010, 2012, 2014. And then what we did to our teenagers, our grade schoolers, and our young adults with the massive overreaction, failed, scientifically, ridiculously, woefully inadequate policies of social isolation, shutting down schools during the COVID times. It's really that post-COVID generation, which is the post-smartphones, technology, and iPad generation, which is really the post-perfect storm generation. So this is going to be a doozy of a conversation that's not always going to be so fun, where we talk about these things trigger sympathetic dominance, fight or flight stuck on, which is anxiety within the brain and nervous system, and really have got our kids stuck in this anxiety loop. That's not going to be the fun part of this conversation, where we see how much they've truly been up against. But the most important part of this one is what we always do, is we stick with us all the way through to the end so you can get to the part that says, hey, we now understand this. It's not just genetic. It's not just bad luck. It's certainly, my goodness, please take a deep breath with your parent heart and how amazing and loving and doing everything you are. And it's certainly not your failing your child as a parent. It's neurophysiology gone haywire due to the perfect storm, due to the advancements of tech and overuse of tech and social media, due to the toxins in our food, our makeups, our skincare, and our freaking air, our water, and everything. And then due also to the medical world really, really playing, their card strongly, that this labeling, diagnosing, and saying, hey, you have this, there's nothing you can do about it, just take these pills and feel better, hopefully. Well, that's part of this conversation in a big way too. So I want to talk to you first and foremost that this is important to understand for just a second or two. Anxiety's normal. Now, I am someone, I'll just use myself for a very simple case study as we go through this. I am not someone who struggles with handling stress for whatever reason. Just another thing to be thankful to my Creator, to God for. I love to go after it. I love to be busy. I love to take on risks. I love to, I got multiple degrees, postdoctorate certifications, started, we had a baby 2 weeks before I graduated from chiropractic school. Then we opened up our practice 2 weeks after that. I mean, even right now I'm crazy. We mow my own lawn at 20 acres, have goats. I don't like talking about myself. I just want to let you know that in a very simple way to understand, there's a lot that comes at me, on a very regular basis. And there's nothing about the way I handle stress or look at things that would say that anybody, even a clinical diagnostic sort of person, no one could really throw the diagnosis or the label anxiety at me. That doesn't mean I haven't experienced anxiety. Are you kidding me? Like even just as of recording this one and getting it out there to you guys, I just got back from flying around the world. I went to Australia and New Zealand and taught our certification protocols within the work that we do to another 65 doctors. And I care so much about the outcome and the effectiveness of my teaching because it goes through those chiropractors to you, your kids and families who need them to be at their best. You better believe I had some serious anxiety heading my way across the world to teach. That's what it was. It absolutely fits that word. Did it stay stuck? Did I stay stuck in that loop? No, but I've experienced it, and we all have. And I only bring that up to let you know that this is true, what I'm about to say. Anxiety is normal. We're all going to face it. Our children are going to face it. Ahead of a big exam, ahead of a friend group that they were a big part of, and now they're not. Ahead of a class that is really, really, really hard and the teacher is not giving them a lot of love and making it way harder than it needs to. That's going to trigger anxiety. So the truth is, everywhere we look in life, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, and our kids included, anxiety is going to come with it. Stress, distress is going to come with it. We actually get better at handling stress, being more emotionally secure, fortified, have grit, have resilience, have adaptability by facing situations and challenges and stressors in life that would trigger anxiety, as well as, you could sneak in, this is a conversation about anxiety on this one, but hyperactivity, impulsivity, nervousness, panic, and even on the other side, sadness and depression. These are things that are going to come along with life. Now, the conversation we really are looking to have with this one is what is different when someone is literally experiencing it 24/7, 365. What is going on when someone is literally trapped by their anxiety, by their depression, and they just can't get out of it? And now it's not only the things that we would kind of naturally understand, hey, a big talk, public speaking, whatever it may be, that would trigger anxiety, but now it's even the littlest stuff. It's the simplest stuff. What's going on with that patient, that child, that teenager's nervous system? Well, in that case, it's not a character flaw. It's not a behavioral choice. They're certainly not choosing to be trapped into anxiety. They're not choosing to, quote unquote, overreact. This is where it's hard for us as parents because we are not in the current neurophysiological stuck loop that they might be in when they're going through this. And we look at it and read it differently. But their neurology, their physiology in that moment is saying, I can't get out of this. I can't look at this different. I can't feel different about this. I can't handle this in a different way. And so that anxiety is a neurophysiological vicious cycle that is triggered by something called subluxation, sympathetic dominance. It's when a child goes through these stressors early in life is worse because it kind of pre-wires or hardwires their nervous system to be pent up and stuck in this sympathetic dominant loop. And that's why we have to look at when we're looking to help our kids with anxiety, and we know they're going to be growing up with technology and ChatGPT and social media and TikTok and everything else, and this crazy culture that almost kind of, wears some of these things as a badge of honor. We got to look at that and say, okay, well, we need to address those things. But what if we dig all the way upstream and we find out that the fertility and pregnancy journey was a very, what I would say, because this is the science behind it, a very sympathetic dominant state. They were really, really stuck in this neurological wiring way back during the fetal prenatal development. What if there was forceps, vacuum, induction, emergency C-section that triggers even more sympathetic dominance, that injures and subluxates the brainstem, which is where the vagus nerve, which is our number one brake pedal, rest, regulate, emotionally balanced side of the nervous system comes from? What if early on they were chronically sick? They had a lot of ear infections, they had a lot of strep infections, they had a lot of respiratory infections, so they got a lot of antibiotics and they got a lot of corticosteroids, which destroy the gut, which is where our serotonin and dopamine, which allow us to calm down and regulate, are absorbed and created. What if all that happened years ago and then all the other life stressors started to pile on? What if all the chemicals, the additives, the flavorings, the pesticides, the herbicides, the glyphosate, what if it's everywhere in our teens' diet? What if it's everywhere inside Rockstar frickin' energy drinks and Red Bull, which are also obviously infused with tons of sugar and caffeine? What if that smartphone, literally the EMFs and just the electrical stress that comes from it, naturally 24/7 triggers your sympathetic response? What if they're getting it from every single direction, have been getting it from every single direction, and now nerves that fire are wired together, and their sympathetic nervous system is stuck on, and their vagus nerve, the parasympathetic, rest, relaxation, brake pedal side of the nervous system is shut down? What I want to really teach you through this back end of this conversation is how essential the vagus nerve is, and very specifically, getting it activated, getting it stimulated is going to be to get your child to navigate, get yourself even, to the other side of this anxiety storm. That's the healing side of the nervous system. It's mind-blowing that no one in the traditional medical, neurological, or even, for the most parts, psychological or psychiatric world talks about the vagus nerve and how the brain and autonomic central nervous system really work. We know that if someone is clinically stuck in anxiety, we know that their sympathetic gas pedal is running the show. The way God designed us, the way every neuroscience physiological textbook would teach you, no matter your beliefs, honestly, this is just cold, clear neuroscience. The only way to slow down the sympathetic train is to throw the brakes, to tap the brakes. Or if we're really stuck, we need to slam on those brakes and throw the e-brake and say, vagus nerve, parasympathetic system, let's get this activated, let's get this stimulated, let's get out of this. We can actually really teach you this by teaching you the truth about the research that the traditional pharmaceutical world has always worked really hard to suppress. Did you know that going for a walk, getting outside, getting sunlight, vitamin D, getting exercise, or even actually taking vitamin D through supplement form, doing things like yoga, singing, getting all these things done? Do you know they've been proven in study after study after study to be as effective, and in many studies, even more effective at helping anxiety and depression? And if I can't ever talk about this stuff without really telling you what the word effective means. That just means feeling better. They not only are helping people feel better than pharmaceutical and function better, feel better symptomatology wise, which is the way they do these randomized clinical trials. It's like, hey, symptomatically, are you better or not? That's their definition of better. There's a better definition of better. Are you actually functioning better? Is your brain, nervous system, autonomic nervous system, and vagus nerve better? And what we know, we've experienced this obviously clinically over almost 20 years of running insight scans and HRV, heart rate variability, which is something you must get access to. If your child or yourself is stuck in anxiety and depression or ADHD, anything neurological, anything neuroemotional, neurobehavioral, mental health world, you have got to figure out how to get access to what are called the insight scans and heart rate variability technology. At very minimum, look up things like an Oura Ring or a Garmin or a Whoop and put a wearable on your teen or on yourself. A little harder to do this with littler kids because they're not made for that. But what we know is HRV technology measures vagus nerve parasympathetic tone, functionality, responsiveness, and stimulus. And when we are subluxated, when a child is sympathetic dominant and stuck in this nervous system dysregulation and dysautonomia, they lose vagus nerve function. It becomes downregulated. This is not just about downregulating synapses for serotonin and dopamine, which, by the way, if you take medications, it does artificially fill the gap, but it makes it so much worse because of what's called the withdrawal effect, because the body picks up on it. Hey, every single day, around 8 a.m. or whatever time somebody takes their medication, I get all this serotonin. So the body is paying attention. It reads it. It sees it's in there. And the nervous system, because it controls everything, will actually down-regulate the production of more serotonin and synapses. So medications versus neurologically focused chiropractic, getting adjusted, being outside, vitamin D, all things natural, drug-free. The worst part is these studies have shown that those things actually help the same or more better, back to my great English again, but they come with long-term benefit and no side effects because they're actually restoring balance to the nervous system. They're restoring regulation and functionality to the nervous system. They're rebooting the vagus nerve. You can literally stimulate your parasympathetics by going outside. You stimulate your sympathetics by staring at your phone. Now, I'm not done yet. I know what you're thinking. You probably already know some of these things, right? And naturally, innately, we know that our teen is going to be trapped into anxiety more if they stay stuck in their dark room, staring at their phone, watching YouTube, stressing out over what is being said on Snapchat. But how hard is it, because it is so often, to get them to then make good choices? You know that if they have a crappy diet, if they're throwing down Raising Cane's, Chick-fil-A, sorry, I'll throw a couple under the bus, Chick-fil-A sauce, McDonald's, Taco Bell, staring at their phone, guzzling Rockstar energy drinks. You can look at that. You didn't need this episode. You didn't need any of this conversation or neuroscience for you to know that's only going to make things worse. What if they're so buried by it that you can't get them to put the phone down? You can't get them to get a good night's sleep. You can't get them outside or to the gym. You can't get them to church. You can't get them to the places you know that healing happens. I want to take you to what I absolutely can tell you unabashedly with full clarity and so much clinical experience. Take them to a neurologically focused chiropractor. See, the coolest thing about the neurotonal techniques that we have created, we know that underneath anxiety and all these neurological conditions is a stuck on sympathetic gas pedal and a shut down parasympathetic vagus nerve brake, regulation, relaxation, deep breath, improved digestion, improved sleep, get you the energy to go out and do life again and heal. We know that all of that is trapped via subluxation. So we have created clinical protocols that are drug-free, that do not treat and do not look to cure anxiety or depression or ADHD or autism or anything else. Instead, they address the root cause of those challenges, and in this conversation, specifically anxiety, at its deepest, most foundational. We're the biggest fans of diet changes, supplements, obviously exercise, yoga, talk therapy, counseling, faith-based, communication. But so often those things will fall short. They'll run into a literal neurological brick wall because the sympathetic storm and the vagus nerve dysfunction has become so bad. It's just near impossible, and sometimes it's downright impossible to get your kiddo unhitched and out of that storm with some of these other interventions, which are wonderful and incredible, but they're designed more for nervous system regulation versus nervous system repair. If your child is really struggling with anxiety, they need nervous system repair, vagus nerve stimulation and activation at its deepest core level. And when I say the word core in a different context, you might think of your abs, the spine, right? Well, that's where the core of neurological function comes from, the neurospinal system. We know that 60% of all of what's called the proprioceptive input into the brain, including very important parts of the brain like amygdala, hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex into this anxiety conversation, we know that the majority of their stimulation comes just from the muscles and the ligaments and the tissues of the neurospinal system. So when that is stuck, stressed, subluxated, and you can see it on your anxiety child, you can see their traps in their shoulders. You felt this, right? Stuck into their ears. They maybe even complain of headaches, maybe even complain of neck tension, back tension, low back issues, constipation, indigestion, anxiety, reflux. The nervous stomach is neurological. It's the vagus nerve because it controls rest, regulation, and digestion. So when the vagus nerve gets trapped into that neurospinal system and proprioception goes down, just think of the P's, they go together. That proprioceptive stimulus, movement, stimulates the parasympathetics, calm and regulation. That's why every time you go for a run or you go for a walk or you get outside and move, you feel better emotionally, mentally. Well, if you can't get your child to do those things, get them into a PX doc's office. Not only will we go into the case history, run the insight scans and HRV technology like we talked about in this one, but the coolest thing about neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments is they work whether a patient is currently doing any work to help themselves or not. When a child or a patient just gets on the table and gets adjusted, we have that much influence over neurology, where we've created these clinical protocols and techniques. We know how to make adjustments that release stuck tension on the sympathetics and the gas pedal and get it to chill. And we know how to make adjustments that stimulate the brake pedal and the vagus nerve and activate the parasympathetic tone. We can measure this through thermal scans, EMG scans, and HRV. And if everything we talked about in this sounds altogether too familiar, and you haven't yet got into this neurologically focused chiropractic care as perhaps, again, not a treatment, not a cure, but as the perfect option, care option, root cause care option for your family, well, then get to the website. Go to the website. If you're not local to us, put in your zip code in your city, get to your local PX doc, send us a DM. If you're watching this, listening to this somewhere else, send us a DM. Just ask us how we can help. We can provide you not only access to these doctors who have this expertise, who have this clinical training, who have this technology, but we can provide you access to even other incredible doctors, interventions, and things that are root cause based, drug free, and will align holistically, naturally with your family. And I'll finish this one off by saying this. This is out of all the different, conversations of conditions or neurological things I could talk about. For me personally, as a dad, I have a beautiful, courageous, hard-charging wife who I love like none other. She means everything to me. Without her, I don't make it 2 feet, down the road any single day. Well, she's such a hard charger that often she can get stuck in these loops, right? I've got 3 daughters. I've got a son who is driven, wants to awesomely, our miracle man, Oliver, if you've been listening in over time on the platform, he wants to get after it with school, with cross country and track and scholarships and dreams to run in the Olympics. And he wants to be a great friend and a great boyfriend and do all these sort of things. So I know that my kids are going to go after life. I know that life's crazy right now. I know that life is pretty toxic right now, very toxic politically. I know that life is, I know they're going to be marketed to like none other by Red Bull, Taco Bell, frickin', you name it, the unhealthy lifestyle that is the current, last couple of generations of first world living. I know it's coming for them. So this conversation, all of it, the understanding from a cognitive perspective standpoint, I think it's the most important. Right on its heels for important is the neurophysiology and saying, hey, I know you're going to come. Yeah, I've seen my kids. It's happened already. I've seen them get stuck in these loops of stress and anxiety. I've seen them get worn out by stress and anxiety and get low and beat themselves up and get into that world. I've experienced all of this that we all do as parents. It's real life. It's really normal, but it's not normal. It's common to get stuck in it, to think that it's genetic and that we're broken or our kids are broken or that we're failing as parents and we need medication and medical intervention as the only way out. We might need a lot of help. We do need a lot of help. We need neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments. So I get to cheat. I'm not only a dad who has this understanding and this faith and this caring and this compassion and this empathy and this just hopefully eternally, the pilot light never goes out on my understanding of all that my kids will go through. I also get to cheat. I can put them on my at-home chiropractic table, get them adjusted, get their sympathetics to chill out, stimulate their vagus nerve and say, hey, I know you're feeling better now because I know that neurophysiologically you're functioning better. So you might need everything we talked about in this one and a few more things. You need your church group. You need your friend group. You need your family to support. You need to get outside, get sunlight, get active. We need the right nutrition. We need the right diet. We need the biblio diet. We need the right supplements. We need to limit screen time and limit, exposure to this fallen world full of stress and anxiety inducing craziness. There's a lot that needs to be addressed to really help get our kids to navigate anxiety and the current world we live in. And it's my prayer, and I really hope that I was effective and helpful and instrumental and impactful for you, your kids, and your family with this conversation we had here today to do that. And if there's any other questions, any other things we can do to help you, obviously the most important step is let's get you adjusted. Let's get your kids and your family adjusted and attack this thing, root cause right at it. And then we'll add the other supports as well. But if there's anything else you need, questions you have around this navigating anxiety conversation, send them our way. We are here to serve every single day. We do it with real life story and experiences. We do it with deep dives into the neuroscience. And then we do it with direct access, as best access as we can, to the doctors, to the interventions, to the drug-free root cause care protocols and options that you have to really create transformative healing for your child. I've seen some of the most miraculous cases of teenagers, young adults, even parents and full adults, and even little kids really heal naturally, fully from their anxiety, and truly, as God designed it to be, come out stronger, more gritty, more resilient, more adaptable, more joyful on the other side. That other side is more than possible for your kiddo. Reach out if you need our help getting them there. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Do you have a question that you would like to submit? Either send it to support@pxdocs.com with the subject Ask Dr. Tony, or head on over to our socials @pxdocs, where you can submit your question in our stories every single week. Every kid counts and every family counts, so let's leave no questions left unanswered. If you loved this episode and you want to help us reach more kids, we would so appreciate if you left a review and a rating on your favorite platform. God bless, be well. We'll see you on the next one.